On this week's edition of Winn Newsweek, we take an in-depth look at the country's capability to withstand natural disasters in light of a fire on the sanitary landfill that sent plumes of smoke across the parish of St. Peter's, affecting residents in the associate communities. We also take a look at the history of one of the biggest fires to ravage Bastille.
Listen closely and you will hear what climate change might sound like.
$30 for a hand of bananas?
Severe drought could destroy banana plants and drive food prices up.
And now we can see the dead coral reef below us.
Dead coral? I thought it was alive.
No, it's dead. If you look at the pictures, you can see what the coral used to look like.
Oh, wow.
Natural wonders like coral reefs are disappearing. But listen closely again, and you can hear the solution. People disposing of garbage responsibly and not in drains and rivers. People responsibly discarding engine oil. Our climate may be changing, but so can we. Making small changes together can have a huge effect on reducing the impacts of climate change. Act now. Rally. Rethink. Respond. This message is brought to you by the OECS Secretariat, with funded assistance from the United States Agency for International Development.
Unmatched, unbelievable, unbeatable. Horsford's Furniture and Appliances unbeatable hire purchase plan. Or low monthly payments. Unbeatable. Or easy credit terms. Unbeatable. Or fantastic savings. Unbeatable. Or prices. Unbeatable. Or terms and conditions. Unbeatable. Or hire purchase plan. Unbeatable. Come to Horsford's Furniture and Appliances today and ask about our unbeatable hire purchase plan. Horsford's hire purchase plan. Unmatched, unbelievable, unbeatable.
In the wake of a recent fire at the landfill in St. Kitts, Winn FM is taking a look at the island's capabilities for managing large-scale disasters in this special report. Bastille has in particular been ravaged over the centuries by a number of disasters, including destructive floods, and in 1867, a fire that swept through the capital, razing hundreds of homes. Sir Probin Innes is the author of Historic Bastille.
In 1867, you had what is called the Great Fire. And it started at the junction of what is today West Independence Square Street and Central Street. It's really the building across the road on the southern side of the road from the National Bank. And there's a fire. The fire started there. I think it was an oven, a baker's oven, which got out of control. And it swept right across, the whole of Bastille as it then was, And it's estimated that as many as 5,000 persons might have been rendered homeless.
Sir Probin says that out of large-scale disasters have come improved systems.
As a result of that, they had to take massive steps in order to realign some of the streets, widen the streets, and make the town much less of a fire hazard than it proved to be in 1867. For example, they had to increase the water supply, whereas previously Bastille had water coming mostly from Oliviers River as it then was. They now had to go further west to places like the Wingfield River, the Old Road rivers, if you will. So it was a massive, massive disaster of 1867. There's no question that the fire benefited the town, the 1867 fire, because in many cases lands were acquired from private landowners, and the streets were widened and streets were cut. The two examples I can think of now are Hart Street, that is a street immediately to the west of the prison, it was felt that, that was a little bit too close for comfort, so they acquired land and cut a street so that the houses on the western side of the prison would not be as close as they had been prior to the fire. And similarly, what we know as New Street was also cut. That's a street immediately west, or rather, I'd better say immediately east of the solid waste offices in between Church Street and 4th Street. A street was cut. They called it New Street in order again to make sure that the houses were not as densely packed together as they had been prior to the fire. Remember that these were days before you had concrete structures, right? I mean, whatever you had of concrete would have been masonry, stonework, done usually on the lower floor, and then the top floor would have been galvanized or shingles in many cases, and wood.
Listen closely and you will hear what climate change might sound like.
$30 for a hand of bananas?
Severe drought could destroy banana plants and drive food prices up.
And now we can see the dead coral reef below us.
Dead coral? I thought it was alive.
No, it's dead. If you look at the pictures, you can see what the coral used to look like.
Oh, wow.
Natural wonders like coral reefs are disappearing. But listen closely again, and you can hear the solution. People disposing of garbage responsibly and not in drains and rivers. People responsibly discarding engine oil. Our climate may be changing, but so can we. Making small changes together can have a huge effect on reducing the impacts of climate change. Act now. Rally. Rethink. Respond. This message is brought to you by the OECS Secretariat with funded assistance from USAID.
In challenging times like these, every penny adds up. That's why you need an insurance company who will not only provide you with the right coverage, but also save you money. At SNCC, we do just that. Saving money couldn't be easier than this. Get a 10% discount on any new property policy when you switch to SNCC. But wait, there's more. For all vehicle owners, switch to SNCC today and get up to an additional 25% no-claim discount. Offer valid until January 31st, 2013.
National Disaster Coordinator Carl Herbert says while the control of fires is handled by the Fire and Rescue Services, the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, has a supporting role should the mass movement of residents become necessary.
Because of what it is, something that is going into the environment, there will also be need for the involvement of the Ministry of Health and the ministry that deals with the environment. What I would say is that we have persons, especially at the Fire and Rescue Department, who have had some training, but to a limited extent as a body. But there's one individual, Mr. Abdias Samuel, who has been extensively trained in that area. And I would encourage you to have a discussion with him. I think currently he's overseas assisting with some training. I would encourage you to engage him in discussion so you can get, and the public can get a good insight into capability at that level. What is the major challenge, though, is that the equipment that one would need to use, especially to respond to an incident, is diverse and very expensive. We're talking about equipment to test air quality, masks and suits that can protect individuals depending on the nature of the hazard, etc. And so that's the major challenge. But as I said, there is some training, so there is some expertise. Now, there's also the multipurpose lab that may be called to provide some support, again, but they also have limited capability. It is also a concern at the regional level, and as a national disaster coordinator of the 18 member countries of the CDMA network, it is something that we have recognized that needs some further attention. And so we continue to lobby for some support in that regard.
The fire in an interim cell at the Connery landfill, where years-old waste was stored, generated thick, acrid smoke into the air for several days back in February. Though it caused discomfort for residents of communities as far away as New Road, it was deemed not to be a significant hazard for people in generally good health. Top health officials did, however, advise persons with respiratory problems to consider relocating temporarily while the smoke was still being emitted.
I would dare say that in terms of comprehensive written plans, most of us don't have those. Now, for example, and I want to get people to understand that NEMA just does not jump into something. As I said before, fire and rescue will be the lead for that. If there was an oil spill on the sea, then we have the Coast Guard unit, we have the Maritime Affairs, will also play some lead role, and NEMA will also be involved as a coordinating agency.
So your primary role then is coordinating the various actions or measures that would have to be put in place?
Well, yes, but remember, coordination comes at different stages. For example, we can coordinate certain pre-activities. We can coordinate a response while a particular incident is taking place, or we may coordinate recovery activities after an impact has taken place.
When you say a response, are you talking about evacuation and those sorts of things?
Well, that is part of it. Now, and speaking of evacuation, again, because the Caribbean region is so highly vulnerable to several hazards, the CDMA office in Barbados, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, developed a model evacuation policy, and they're working on a plan for its member countries. And St. Kitts Nevis was given the opportunity on the 14th of February, that's about two weeks ago approximately, to begin the adaptation of the policy. So we had an initial meeting on Nevis, and we will do some further work in that regard. And then that will be followed by trying to adopt the model plan. Now, this evacuation policy will give us that overarching framework that can assist us in how we address evacuation, not only on land, but in the event of a hazard that is related to, let's say, an impact from the sea, let's say tsunami or coastal erosion, storm surge, etc. So, again, that would be part of the equation, but in the absence of all the equipment and the written plans, there are persons who are trained, as I said, in hazardous materials incidents and also in disaster management that will use that training and apply some good sense, and will address the matter as necessary.
Listen closely and you will hear what climate change might sound like.
$30 for a hand of bananas?
Severe drought could destroy banana plants and drive food prices up.
And now we can see the dead coral reef below us.
Dead coral? I thought it was alive.
No, it's dead. If you look at the pictures, you can see what the coral used to look like.
Oh, wow.
Natural wonders like coral reefs are disappearing. But listen closely again, and you can hear the solution. People disposing of garbage responsibly and not in drains and rivers. People responsibly discarding engine oil. Our climate may be changing, but so can we. Making small changes together can have a huge effect on reducing the impacts of climate change. Act now. Rally. Rethink. Respond. This message is brought to you by the OECS Secretariat with funded assistance from USAID.
The fire was eventually contained using dirt and was allowed to burn out, but it continues to smolder beneath the surface deep inside the cell, which landfill officials and the Fire and Rescue Services point out is not unusual at such facilities. Everett O'Garo is the Deputy Fire Chief with the Fire and Rescue Services.
I just want to assure the public that we've been monitoring the situation at the landfill along with officials from the Solid Waste Department. And if there's need for us to, to do more with respect to effecting evacuation from certain areas because of the type of effect the toxic smoke is having on that particular community, I'm sure definitely, we would jump into action if that is required.
Is it still burning quietly? Is it out? Is it under control?
It's basically gone into a phase that we term as smoldering, where most of the burning is taking place deep in the soil. So there's no visible flames, and there's not much smoke. Most of it is taking place deep below the surface. So,
Mr. O'Gara is one of 2 FRS personnel who has received specialized training in the management of toxic fires.
In a situation like that, they will be able to recognize the type of hazards that are involved and, the type of threat that they would pose to the surrounding community. In that case, there's a number of actions that can be taken, and it will be done in collaboration with people from the disaster preparedness organization as well as the police. If there's need for evacuation, both 3 agencies would come into play and effect an evacuation if necessary in that case. We do have, a couple of hazmat suits on hand. They're not the ideal ones that we would like to have at the moment. As I said, one of our officers, Mr. Abdias Samuels, has been away on training, and we've been trying to see how we can get some of these, the equipment that you spoke about, the hazmat suits and type of devices that are used to test the air, to check to see exactly what type of, hazard or chemical we are dealing with, in those type of cases. So, yes, we do have some equipment on hand, but the ideal ones that we would like to have, we don't have at present.
But we do have basic tests for gases and those sorts of things. We can do the basic stuff?
That is correct. And not necessarily the fire services, but we in situations like that, we would seek assistance from, trained persons in the health departments and stuff like that.
Everett O'Gara, Deputy Fire Chief with the Fire and Rescue Services.